When you were a kid growing up in the late 80s and early 90s, there was one pop star that stood way above all other pop stars.
Pepsi presents Michael Jackson, Dangerous World Tour.
Michael Jackson back in those days was a household name like Mickey Mouse or The Simpsons.
The king of pop, Michael Jackson!
And so, it absolutely blows my mind that everything we know and remember about Michael Jackson was almost completely destroyed when my dad almost accidentally killed Michael Jackson.
Two ways to kill. One's this way.
Yeah.
And the other one is this way. No.
But first, a word about this video's sponsor, Encore. Back in the early 2000s, Dad loved surprising me with video games he found on eBay.
Well, tell me how rare this is.
Today, we have Encore, the place to learn about and shop for retro video games. Real collectors tell you about the games they're selling, and many actually show you gameplay footage in their video listings. If I had to describe Encore, I'd say it's like TikTok was combined with an online auction. It's a great alternative to live stream shopping, since you can look for cool games on your schedule whenever you want. The auctions on Encore can get crazy on some of the rarer items. With last-minute bids flying in and lots of trash talking in the chat, you might also make some new friends or enemies. And Encore takes trust and safety seriously. All sellers are ID verified. The Encore guarantee protects you when your item comes not as described. Not only are sellers trustworthy, but they have fantastic customer service. Don't be surprised if you win an auction and the seller personally messages you to say thank you and let you know you're in good hands. There are tons of giveaways in the app that are completely free to enter. Encore pays for giveaway shipping, so if you win, you don't pay anything. Once you've entered a giveaway, you can get 5 extra entries per friend that you bring to join the giveaway. Just share the link in the app with your friends, and when they enter, your odds of winning go up quickly. Use my link to download Encore on the iOS and Android app stores to start winning deals on video games and consoles. Thank you, Encore, for sponsoring today's video. I can remember the precise moment when I became a Michael Jackson fan. I was probably 5 or 6 years old, and I remember my parents were watching TV late at night, and I guess it was VH1 or MTV, but there was a music video premiere happening, and it was the music video premiere for Michael Jackson's song Black or White.
If you're sitting down, get up. It's time for the MTV world premiere of Michael Jackson's Black or White.
That music video actually had Macaulay Culkin in it, and I think that's why my parents let me stay up and watch it, because they knew how much I loved Home Alone and how I was a Macaulay Culkin fan.
Eat this.
After the debut of that music video, I wanted everything Michael Jackson. Even though my dad wasn't a fan, he went out of his way to buy me Michael Jackson music. And the first album I ever owned of Michael Jackson's was the Dangerous album.
Michael Jackson, Dangerous.
The sound of this album always reminded me of like Sega Genesis music. And of course, later on, we would come to find out that Michael Jackson worked on the music for Sonic the Hedgehog 3, uncredited. And so it makes sense. I feel like Sega was probably listening to this album and really, you know, a lot of their composers were inspired by the sounds of MJ. As it turns out, Michael Jackson actually had his own video game too on the Sega Genesis. And I was homesick from school one day, and Dad actually went out of his way to try to make me feel better. He picked up Michael Jackson's Moonwalker on the Sega Genesis, brought that home for me because he knew how much I was enjoying Michael Jackson and in this Michael Jackson season of my young life.
Michael Jackson's Moonwalker video game, only on the Genesis system by Sega.
My whole world at this point was like video games, cartoons, and Michael Jackson. I mean, it was a good time to be a kid growing up then, I tell you what, man. And you know, it was in this environment at home that my dad decided one day to tell me a story from his past that would shock me to my core as a young Michael Jackson fan. Back in 1982, in his late 20s, Dad decided he was going to try his hand at becoming a filmmaker out on the West Coast. He had been a New York filmmaker, done a bunch of indie films and projects, and it was time for him to move out to the West Coast and really try to make it in Hollywood as a film director.
My name is Mark Bill Gray. I wrote and I'm in the film, and this is Mark Esposito. He's the director, and that's Corey Rybeck at the end who photographed the film.
And it was out on the West Coast in Hollywood that my dad almost killed Michael Jackson. I remember one day my dad was either watching me play Michael Jackson's Moonwalker on the Sega Genesis, or maybe I was listening to the Dangerous album or one of Michael Jackson's other albums that I had picked up. And Dad asks me, because he wasn't really a huge Michael Jackson fan, and he starts asking me, you know, Tyler, what is it about Michael Jackson that you love? You know, why do you really like this so much? As he's gauging me, he says to me, Tyler, would you believe me if I told you that all of this music, all of these video games, everything you know and love about Michael Jackson, what if I told you that I was almost responsible for none of this ever happening? And he proceeds to tell me this wild story about how when he was a struggling filmmaker out in Hollywood, he and a friend were driving late at night in the middle of a rainstorm down, I want to say it was like Hollywood Boulevard, or it was a famous street. It was like a well-known area of LA. He's telling me this story and I'm like, where is this going? This was 1982, and so Michael Jackson was in the middle of recording the Thriller album. He's like, you know, it was late that night. The rain was coming down so hard. It was his friend who was driving, but my dad was in the passenger seat. They're talking to each other. They're having a good time. They're not really focused completely on the road, is what he was telling me. That his friend apparently was a real talker, a real kind of loudmouth kind of guy, very, very energetic, and he's driving and not really paying attention and talking to my dad in the passenger seat. And all of a sudden, my dad looks out through the rain. The visibility was horrible, he told me. And he looks out and he sees a man carrying what looks like sound recordings, like old analog sound recordings on tape, you know, like master tracks. And he sees him out in the distance, and they're heading right for him. And so Dad sees him and shouts, "Look out!" The friend of my dad's sees the man out ahead of him. He slams on the brake. They're both screaming in the car. The car is coming to a screeching stop right before hitting the man. And in the headlights of the car, with the rain coming down, this is how my dad described it, they both, after the jolt, look up through the window and they see, at least my dad recognizes, that it's Michael Jackson. And Michael Jackson, according to my dad, is terrified. And this is how my dad would tell the story. He was like, oh, like carrying these things, like he's shocked. He can't believe what almost just happened. And then he keeps on walking across the street. and doesn't stop to talk to them, just keeps on his way. I mean, my dad's friend is cursing at him at this point, so I don't blame Michael Jackson, but my dad recognizes who it is. The friend doesn't, and my dad turns to him, and my dad goes, "Do you know who that is?" And the guy goes, "I don't know. I don't care who he is. I almost killed him." And my dad goes, "You don't understand. That's Michael Jackson. You almost just killed Michael Jackson." I'm listening to this story, and I'm completely entranced by it. And here's the kicker, guys. He was carrying these master tracks, these what look like audio recordings. He goes, "Tyler, do you know what album came out that year in 1982? And I'm like, "Thriller? Are you telling me?" He's like, "Yeah. If this had happened, if we had accidentally killed Michael Jackson, those were the Thriller master tapes." He goes, I'm pretty certain that those were the master tape recordings, that he was late night, probably working on these masters, and he was carrying them with him in this rainstorm to wherever he was going." Dad's story checks out because Thriller was recorded in Westlake Recording Studios in West Hollywood on Santa Monica Boulevard. The street that my dad and his friend were driving on was probably Santa Monica Boulevard. So not only did they almost kill Michael Jackson, they almost destroyed Thriller. The Thriller album may have never existed and could have been destroyed if those were the only copies, maybe. You just never knew back then. Things weren't backed up and digitized like they are today. These were the analog master tapes, the way my dad was describing this. So he finishes telling me this story, and he's like, "So Tyler, everything you love about Michael Jackson, all this stuff, it almost all ended that night. Can you imagine?"
The winner is Michael Jackson.
I was just in shock, guys. I mean, I was so blown away by this story, and I believed every word of it, and I still do to this day, because my dad wasn't an embellisher. He wasn't somebody who told tall tales. He had some amazing life experiences, and maybe I'll share some more of those with you another time. But this was probably the most consequential. I mean, talk about a moment in time where so much of the world and pop culture and just everything that we as a society and we as lovers of music, it just would have all changed had it actually happened that night. Had my dad and his friend almost accidentally killed Michael Jackson that crazy rainy night. So after he told me this story, it only made the legend of Michael Jackson at the time for me just grow and just become this larger than life thing. As the years went on, my love and adoration of Michael Jackson did begin to wane. There were scandals that erupted in the 90s, and it was hard at times to be a fan back then during those scandals. But Michael Jackson today, his music endures, and it's such a part of my childhood and my upbringing that I listen to his music and I am immediately transported back in time. Well, that's about it for this video, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this really insane story from my dad's past, where fate almost deemed it necessary that my dad be a part of the demise of Michael Jackson before his explosion into pop culture fame. To think that the Thriller album and Michael Jackson himself were almost ended on that fateful night back in 1982, where my dad was in a vehicle that almost struck and hit Michael Jackson. It's just crazy. It's just crazy, and I had to share it with you. If this is your first time to the channel, please do consider subscribing. I love talking about my game crazy family and my game crazy dad, who recorded so much of my childhood on videotape. That is it, guys. I'll catch you next time.